I think you're going to be really interested in this conversation. All power, it belongs to God, all glory to God. But I think you're going to see an interesting story, hear an interesting story. And we want to show you how powerful God is, how powerful the church is as we do God's work. So stay with us. I'm Zach. This is The Average Christian. This is 2.0, where we have conversations, but this channel is still about what it means to have a relationship with God, how to live that out in practical, everyday terms, and let's keep each other accountable as well. We want to make sure we're doing exactly what God wants. This is Robby Eversole, who has been back with the Lord for about 5 years now, and so glad to have you, Robby. And we're going to talk about whatever you want to, man, and we'll just kind of let this thing go like we've been talking about earlier. We've had some conversation that you missed out on, but I've enjoyed thoroughly. It was March 21st, 2016, when you were shot, and that's when your world flipped upside down.
It sure did. Prior to March 21st, 2016, I was living a life as a criminal, a drug addict. It didn't start that way. I was raised in the church, son of a gospel preacher, but I took the wrong path, and that led down to a life of addiction and dependence on chemicals, dependence on, as the nature of sin is, you add sin unto sin. So it become the lifestyle. And that all came to a head on March 21st, 2016, when I kicked a young man's door in, and I was shot twice and was taken to Erlanger Hospital in Chattanooga. And that was from Cleveland, Tennessee, where I was shot. And it started a long battle for my life, and really is a testament to the power of God to do whatever he does in the way that he does it. One of the bullets had completely severed the aorta in my abdomen, and the medical team said there was no way that I should have made it even to the hospital. I had literally no blood in my body. They started 14 units of blood over 14 hours as they were getting me just to a stable point to see if I could make it through the rest of the night.
Man.
And, that's what sin does. It completely destroys, but addiction's a problem that we're facing in America and even the church.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I guess that was more where I was thinking. I appreciate you sharing this too, by the way. We've talked about how, I don't know, I guess maybe sidetracked people can get, because I love it when people say, oh, I hate drama. I hate drama. What'd they say? Where was it? Tell me again. Because we all like to, and I'm afraid sometimes that happens to you, right? Where everybody wants to know all these juicy details, but that's not really the story. The story is how you came out of that. You never planned to be in the situation you were in that led to you being shot. I mean, I'm sure whenever you started down that road, you had never planned for.
That was never the intention, but that's where Satan wanted me.
Yeah.
And, I didn't start out day one a terrible drug addict.
Yeah.
It was something that built up, but when sin is full grown, it brings forth death, and that can be very physical as well. And so, I found myself in a horrible position, facing a lot of prison time, facing a recovery period. And so I was given a choice. My dad, in a hospital room after I'd come out off of life support and they had moved me to a normal room, asked me a question. He said, "Son, I want to help you, and you need help." And I did. Yeah. He said, "But if you don't want help, I don't want to waste my time. And I would like to know, and I would like to know soon, because I need to get to work on helping you soon. Yeah. If you want help, but if you don't waste my time." And that was a plea out of love and tough love.
Yeah.
But I made the right decision, and I told him I did want help. And another gospel preacher, Jake Sutton, knew of a rehab program that was run and operated by Churches of Christ. And I moved there just a few days after I had gotten out of the hospital. And they took me in all boogered up, and I started my journey to recovery.
Yeah.
And it was a long process. I was there 18 months. Once the devil has his hooks in you, you're not always going to come out scot-free, and you're not always going to come out day one. It was a process.
Yeah.
And addiction is a horrible, horrible plight on the human mind, on the human body, and even on the soul.
Yeah.
And it's hard to overcome, but I didn't do it alone. God instituted the church, and he created a family, and I repented, and I came back, and that family got behind me, and they've helped me get to this hour in my life. There's no way someone can come out of addiction alone. It takes a support system. And that's exactly what God did for us through the church. He gave us a support system.
Absolutely. And there's so much to ask and so much to talk about.
Right.
Tell everybody where you are right now.
Right now, I am preparing to graduate from the Tri-City School of Preaching and Christian Development in October. I'm a wraparound student. Yeah. So I've got one more quarter after this quarter ends. And so we'll have a little bit of a summer break. I'll come back in August, and I'll be done in October.
Yeah.
And so I'm about to finish 3 years of preacher training school.
So you started this roughly 2 years. I mean, you said you were recovering, or you were in rehab for what, 18 months?
18 months. I got out of rehab October the 12th of 2017. I ended up pleading guilty to the charges that I was facing in May of 2018, which then when I pled guilty, the judge revoked my bond and took me to jail, and he set my sentencing day off for 3 months. So I got out of jail right in time to go to PTP in 2018 in August.
Yeah.
And I was sentenced to 20 years, Tennessee Department of Corrections. And once I got out,
I got to ask you
go
something.
ahead.
So you got out just in time to go to Polishing the Pulpit, 2018.
Uh-huh.
How many people know what you've just been through, where you're just coming from? I guess what struck me is how little we know about what's really going on with somebody. You know what I'm saying?
You know, I guess Polishing the Pulpit, I was commissioned to talk about that.
Right.
And so I was in one of the ballrooms, and there was maybe 500 people in there that night. But I had been out of jail for about 8 days.
Right.
But
now they knew, but how many people in the audience knew?
Yeah.
This guy's fresh off, you know?
Yeah. You know, and that's the thing about Christianity. It's so messy.
Thank you.
You know, we are sinful people. We get caught up in doing the wrong things. Good people.
Yeah.
Good people get caught doing the wrong things.
Yes.
And good people get overtaken. That's Galatians 6:1. If any man get overtaken in a fault,
yeah,
that's going to happen. God knows that.
Mm-hmm.
And he's given us a way to be redeemed from those things. But the Christian life it's a messy life, and it's a messy ministry.
Yes.
And anyone that thinks that they can minister to the world or even to the church is full of people that have problems.
Yeah.
You think about the church in Corinth, and such were some of you. There were drunks and homosexuals and all kinds of dirty, messy problems.
Worship was a mess. All that, yeah. And I often wondered, like, I don't mean to chase rabbits here. I'll guide us back in, but like you're talking about it being messy. I've wondered before if the church at Corinth existed today, would we be like, stay away from them, or would we write a letter, or would we reach out, would we call them brethren and tell them how much we love them, or would we be like that bunch of freaks over there?
But we've probably written them off a long time ago.
I wonder, some of us maybe.
Yeah, which it's sad. We've got to do better.
Yeah.
But you know, here I am. It's August of 18.
Okay.
And I get out of jail, go to PTP September the 15th. My wife and I pack up with our 3-year-old. Well, he was 1 at the time. And we moved to Elizabethton.
You're married in the middle of all this.
Yes.
Bless her heart. I mean,
yes,
she's a trooper.
She's been through it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So we pick up and we move to preaching school. She's never lived far from where she's from. She had a good job managing an optometrist office in Rome.
Yeah.
She's really independent. And so she gave all of that up to support me in this endeavor. What a woman.
Yes.
But we moved in September, started school in October of 18.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was just really bam, 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 bam. And the church has supported us through it all. They've really, I had a lot of church members write my judge letters begging for mercy, begging for him to consider the changes that I'd made in my life.
Wow.
Letters from all over. He could only consider letters from the state of Tennessee. And so but there were 150 people that wrote from the state of Tennessee that wrote letters on my behalf asking him for leniency. And I've taken advantage of that and plan to keep taking advantage of that.
Yes, sir.
Sin has consequences.
Mm-hmm.
And I've definitely faced the consequences for my actions. I've received a boatload of mercy. But my judge was completely honest with me. And he said, don't ever come before me again and not be an innocent man. And I know he meant what he said.
Yeah, that's right. Well, you have that sort of, for lack of a better way to put it, you've got that hanging over. I mean, it's not like, tell everybody real quick what you told me about how you didn't have to serve and how odd that is, and how, not awkward, but how odd that is.
It really is. My court case was a 1 in a million case.
Yeah.
What happened is not happened before. I was facing a long time, 60 plus years in prison. And the gentleman that shot me refused to press charges against me for the home invasion. And he ended up doing almost 2 years because he wouldn't press charges, but the state of Tennessee dropped the home invasion charges that were against me.
Mm-hmm.
And the prosecutor and the head of the drug task force worked together with my attorney, and they lowered all the charges that they could lower until I was facing 16 to 24 years. But me getting shot allowed me, they didn't want me in jail in that condition.
Yeah.
So it allowed me a window of time to where I could be put into a rehab program. And it's in Decatur, Alabama. It's called Project Rescue. I just want that to be on record. If anybody knows of a young man, it's a male-only system, but if you know of a young man that needs help, Project Rescue in Decatur, Alabama, it's a great place.
Good.
So I entered there on April the 12th of 2016.
Mm-hmm.
And just a couple days before, I was ready not to go. But I made that statement. My dad picked me up the next day about 8 o'clock in the morning and said, we're going. And we went. And so I had court dates every other month. My attorney had notified the courts that I had entered into a rehab program, and they said that was okay. And so I started doing the rehab program, showing up every other month with letters from the program, and the program manager would drive the 3 hours to show up at court with me. And that's not how it usually works. How it usually works is you go to jail, you do a certain amount of time, and they'll let you out contingent on you going to rehab. Mm-hmm. So you always serve the time on the front end. Mm-hmm. Well, I went to rehab for 18 months on the front end, then pled guilty to my charges, served 3 months on the back end, which should have been years and years and years.
Right. And
they let me out to serve that time as a free individual with supervision.
Right. And so that's still hanging over your head.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But is it a motivator? I mean, do you think about that much, or are you motivated by?
No, I did it. I did at first. That's one of the things that helped keep me in rehab, was because there were times that I was ready to quit fighting. Yeah. God knew exactly what it was going to take to bring me back to him. And that was, I had to be completely broken physically. I was completely broken emotionally. I was completely broken psychologically. Mm-hmm. And then I had all of this prison time hanging over my head. My life was completely shattered. But that's exactly what it needed to. It had to be that way, or I would have never come back. I was so far gone. I was at the point of suicide. I was suicidal. I'd sucked on the end of a pistol for hours, sobbing.
Man.
Tired of life, tired of, did not see a way out.
So you hated the life you were in.
Absolutely. I tried on my own to quit the drugs. I would make it a couple days, and then I would be right back in it.
Right.
I couldn't do it on my own. And I had a praying family, a praying father, a praying sister. Oh. And God saw fit to spare my life, even living that kind of life. I got a second chance, and not many people make it out of that life.
No.
Not many people get shot and have those kind of injuries and live to tell about them.
Yeah, you should be dead.
But God.
Yeah, there you go. Now, that's the thing, too. You told me your sister had posted on Facebook in a group, right?
Yes,
like
it was the group. Young Adults Facebook page from the East Ridge Church of Christ in Chattanooga. And I had written my mother a post talking about my desire to end my life. And I mean, just imagine being a mother and reading something that from your child, you know. But that's where I was at. And so they didn't know what to do with me. A couple weeks prior, my mother had told me to get out of her life. Wow. You know, I had used and abused her, was a horrible person, a horrible son. And so they didn't know what to do with me. They were, you know, here I was 30 years old and living a crazy, insane life. Yeah. They didn't know how to handle me, but God did. God knew exactly how to handle me. Yeah. And, but he spared my life. So I owe the rest of it to him.
Oh, yeah.
And to his church and to the lost, to those people that are living in the same predicament that I was in. You know, I was raised like many people in the church. I was born into it, so to speak.
Yeah.
You know,
same here, PK.
But I went out and made my own decisions as a young adult, and those decisions cost me. And I can't say that I wasn't warned. I had definitely been warned. Yeah. But I had the attitude that I was going to be different. That I could, you know, young and strong, and graduated high school, was voted most talented, and you know, I've got all of this ability. I can do whatever I want to in life, and I chose to do the wrong things. Yeah. But I thought that I could do it, and that I was strong enough and different enough that I wouldn't face the same consequences.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
I'd forgotten that God said, "Be not deceived, God's not mocked. Whatsoever man soweth, that's what he's going to reap." And it came true in my life. Yeah. And it'll come true in anyone's life that tries to live a life of sin that's going to catch up.
And it's not just look, we know the wages of sin is death, and we understand that hell is the final punishment, but sin costs, as all of us can attest. I mean, there's not a person alive who's a Christian who doesn't have scars, who doesn't have a past, no matter how different it is. It doesn't have to be your past, and it doesn't have to be all these other things that we think of that in order to fit the bill, but there are scars and there's payment to be made here. And I have my own history, which is a little, of course, different from yours, but you take it day to day. You learn gratitude, and there's so much more. I don't even want to try to get into it and get you off of what you're talking about. Prayer. I mean, the story was, when I first heard about you, the first thing I heard was his dad. I'm sure your mom did too. The story was his dad was praying, do whatever you got to do to him, to break him, basically.
Yeah. He had prayed for a long time, and I joke and tell him he prayed me into a bullet, but he had prayed for so long that whatever God deemed necessary to save my soul, to make me go to my knees and look up to him, and to start trusting in him again, whatever that was, that's what he prayed for. And, you know, that's when I'd ostracized myself from my family.
I'm sure.
From my sister, she didn't live that kind of lifestyle. married to her middle school and high school sweetheart. They started dating when she was in the 7th. He was in 8th grade. They married 30 days after she graduated. They've got 2 kids. They've been together longer now than they've lived, separate. Right. And
picture perfect.
Kind of, yeah. Everybody has their problems, but they're, right. Fairy tale. Right. And so they didn't, I didn't come around them. They didn't want their kids, my nieces, to be around that. Yeah. My father did not condone my lifestyle. So I would see them once or twice a year. Right. I'd never answer phone calls. I would text back, 2 or 3 times a year. That was it.
Wow.
But whenever I would see my dad, usually on his birthday, I'd show up to the birthday party, and he would always he would never browbeat me. He'd never take his little New Testament out and, give me one over the head. He would always just say, "I wish you would consider your soul."
Wow.
Or something as simple as, "I wish you would come back to church." And that's all he would have to say. Yeah. Because he raised me right.
Right.
I knew the right way. I just chose the wrong way. And so then I was clawing to get out of that situation. But he was always, although he did not condone my lifestyle, he was always pulling for me to do the right thing. And
you knew, can I stop you there and ask you this? You knew the whole time you had an open door. You knew that, number one, your dad loved you. And you knew at any moment you could call on him, your mom or dad. I'm just using your dad here.
Yes.
But you knew that he didn't shut any doors, even though he made it clear, "I don't support this. We're not together on this."
Absolutely. And from the moment that they got the phone call, I was shot at about 10:30 at night, and they did not even know until about 11 o'clock that next day.
Oh, wow.
My mom had saw it on the news and didn't know that it was me. She saw it on the 11 o'clock news and had no clue that it was her own son. But when my dad showed up at the hospital, he never left my side. I was only there. When this first happened, they told my parents, if he lives, he will be here for months on life support, multiple surgeries. Mm-hmm. I walked out of there in 9 days.
That's amazing. You walked out.
9 days.
That's amazing.
It's a testament to prayer.
Yeah. That's
a testament to the power of God to do what he does. He can do exceedingly abundantly above and beyond all that we could ask or think. And we'll never understand all of that.
Exactly.
But I trust it.
Yeah.
I trust it. He's taken a broken and shattered life like mine, and he's helped me put the pieces back together. And that's what the Christian life is. We're all broken and shattered in our own way. We've all got a history. Mm-hmm. We've got a past. We've got baggage. Some people's baggage is lighter than others.
Yeah.
But we've all got our own issues. We've got families. Families are messy.
Yeah.
We've got to get this down and just be honest about it.
Yeah.
There is no picture perfect Christian life. I tell you what is the picture perfect Christian life is the man that never gives up. The woman that never gives up.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with the struggle.
No.
The struggle's part of it.
Drew Leonard said that recently. He did a lesson on porn and said, I think it was at Stony Creek, wasn't it?
It was.
And said, you're struggling. Great. And it's hard to get people. For me, it's hard to understand too. That's the nature of it. Practicing righteousness is just that, practicing, which includes mess ups, ugliness, all that stuff. And it's a struggle.
Yes. If it is the case that we serve an almighty, all-knowing, all-present God, he knows and he understands. He made our minds. He made us. He understands our weaknesses. Mm-hmm. That's why we have a faithful high priest. He can sympathize with the infirmities of our weaknesses. That's our God.
Yeah.
And so we might as well just be honest and take our mask off and say, when I'm struggling, I'm struggling. Yeah. I need prayer. I need help. I can't do this alone. Nobody can.
Is it still ugly for you, or has it been, I want to be careful I speak here because I don't want to degrade anybody else's reaction to you. Has it been ugly for you as far as the comeback, or is it sort of glamorized because your story is so big and different, or has it? Have you seen
so there's going to be some new information about Robby's life that's released right here, right now, that's never been told before.
Only if you're comfortable with that.
Absolutely.
Okay, cool.
Because it's part of the journey.
Okay.
So part of overcoming addiction is building walls around the sober life. And that is done through accountability.
Okay.
So when I left rehab, before I ever left the property, I called my mom and I asked her, will you buy me a case of drug test cups and have them sent to my dad's house? And I'm going to have somebody at the congregation there at Penville. I'm going to find somebody that'll be willing to random drug test me.
Mm.
So I wasn't even gone from the property there. The day I left, there were already drug tests that I had requested.
Yeah.
Sitting in town where I was living, and a man that I grew up with, a son. He's like a second father figure to me.
Mm-hmm.
Randy Young. He said, yes, I'll do that for you. And I never knew. He would just walk up to me at church sometime, and he had half the case in his possession.
Yeah.
And he would bring them to church and just randomly say, come on, let's go to the bathroom in the back.
Yeah.
And he would drug test me, and that was accountability.
Good.
That's how you stay sober. You have to keep accountable. I was at home. My wife was working, and I was watching our son, and I just fed him, and he was napping, and I was doing some cleaning, and the taste of methamphetamine hit me in my mouth just as if I had used.
Wow.
Really strong. That's the power of our mind.
Wow.
And so I immediately called my support system, one of my friends, a mentor to me, and an accountability partner, and I told him, I said, man, I'm cleaning the house, watching my kid here, and I just had the strongest taste of meth in my mouth that I mean, just like I had poured it in my mouth. And
this is how long after you quit using it?
I'd been clean for 2 years.
Good day, and still
And
like
still, that. Yeah. But that's the power of our mind, and that's the danger of even beginning to start to mess with something as powerful as drugs or alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
It is, you are brought under Paul said that he's not willing to be brought under the power of any. He understood that there's stuff out there that you can be brought under the power of.
Yeah.
We're either slaves to sin or of righteousness.
Yeah.
And I had been a slave for a long time to methamphetamines and that lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
And the devil was going to do everything he could to see if he couldn't make me slip.
Yeah, and still is. News break, he's still doing that to all of us.
Absolutely.
So you're on that path. You're telling me about this accountability, and I'd ask you, was it difficult? Was it difficult? Would people look at you with the side eye? Because you don't fit. I mean, none of us do, if we're honest. You don't fit the church mold, the steeple and everybody dressed nicely and how are you? I'm fine. Was it difficult to find your way back in?
I had to deal with the shame.
Yeah.
That was difficult.
Oh.
Coming back home, so to speak, and knowing how public it was, my life.
Knew.
When the news went out that I was shot, my dad had put a post out on Facebook, and it went around the world.
Good.
He received responses from every continent except Africa and Antarctica.
Good.
My sister had made me a book, a 3-inch 3-ring binder, and it has their post and every response. And it was worldwide. I think it was Lads to Leaders was going on at the time, and I was in the hospital, and my sister left. She told me that they had to go to Lads to Leaders and that they'd be back, but they were praying for me at the Sunday service. You had thousands of Christians together, and they took my name to the throne room of heaven. And, but yeah.
Just that, that's where I wanted to, I'm glad we went that direction. You went that direction with it, because it's not so much what all, we're I don't know what it is. I don't even know how to put it. We're just kind of enamored with. That's why we like watching violent movies and stuff like that. We watch stuff like when we drive by an accident, we want to see what happened, because all that stuff's fun to listen to. But that's not what the story and the message is about. The message is about what God did himself, however he does that, providentially, and what he did through your family, what he did through your brothers and sisters, and what he's still doing now. Because you don't stand here without those.
No, and to get back to the shame, yeah, it was hard. It was shameful. It was embarrassing. When you finally come to your senses after being in psychosis and drug addiction and living that life, and you've been totally separated from the church. So, there is nothing to be ashamed about when you're just around other criminals and thieves and living and drug addicts.
Yeah.
But when there's a stark contrast between people that are striving to live a righteous and holy life, and I hadn't been around those kind of people in 10 years.
Yeah.
It had been a long time since I had been, anywhere near the church house, so to speak.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of shame there. It was difficult, but God's people are the best people. And they didn't make me feel that way.
Good.
I knew I had a lot of proving to do.
Sure.
I had a lot of proving to do to my family. And I'm still proving myself daily. But they made it pretty easy.
Well, and it's a good thing that you mentioned you don't rebuild trust all of a sudden.
No.
But you do it over years, and now 5 years later, there's, I'm sure, a whole lot more trust there. And I can't imagine what that was like. I'll give you, and I don't know how many people know about this, and I got to be careful how I say it, because my wife gets on to me. But my story was growing up in the church, raised in it. Dad's a preacher, go to Bible camp, become sort of a leader, teaching at 20 years old, teaching a youth class at Cherokee. We were attending there. And I was working at Dempsey's at the time. Laura and I have been dating 3 years, and we're kind of like the Christian couple, so to speak. And then we're pregnant because we weren't. It was a year into our relationship, and you say, never again, never again. Guards, walls go down. And it's not that big of a deal until that happens. Then you don't want the gossip and stuff to go around. So you walk in after you've told your parents, her parents, after I've told my parents, and then we decide before it ever gets out and all the rumors start, which I'm sure you've, maybe not rumors, but you just hear people mess things up and pass along information. So I stood up in front of the congregation and read a letter. And I remember the wide eyes and the stark silence in that congregation and that shame. And it took some brethren a long time to be able to look us in the eyes again, be able to talk to us because we had let them down so much. And that's my small version. But to walk into a place where you were once really comfortable and you were family, and now you got to go back in and you're black sheep.
I went through a very similar situation. When I was living this life and had gone into rehab, I wasn't married.
Yeah.
My now wife started sending me cards in rehab. I don't know if you've listened to Don Blackwell's sermon, and he talks about all the cards on the walls. That was me. I've still got every card, but I ran out of wall space to put the cards on. I've got a 20-pound sausage box that's stuffed full of cards, and it was on days where I felt like giving up that I would get a stack of mail like this of Christians. And one of them was my now wife that was encouraging me to keep going.
Yeah.
And so we connected like that and started dating, and I would come home to see her or whatever, and then she wound up pregnant.
Oh, yeah.
And I had been teaching the high school Bible class at church there in town, and been leading singing and this, that, and the other, and sin was exposed again.
Yeah.
And there were some brethren when I repented that, they were very understanding and very kind, and others said he can't teach anymore.
Oh yeah.
And didn't want me teaching, didn't want me serving in any way.
Yeah.
And luckily, one of the older gentlemen at the congregation, they didn't have elders, but he had been an elder before. He asked the preacher to do a lesson on forgiveness and grace. And he really encouraged me to pick up the pieces and keep going. And that's what we do in life. We do our best. Every Christian, I'm convinced that every Christian does their best to do the right thing. But sometimes we mess up.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we fail.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we're going to make mistakes, and sometimes our mistakes are going to be exposed like
they're ugly,
like a baby.
Right.
But we've done the right thing since.
You know, one thing to sort of shift gears a little bit is, I'm glad you said the church is wonderful and God's people are wonderful. I'll relate it, and you'll probably be able to relate to this as well. There were some bad reactions, and there were people who didn't know how to react. And I had a lady who we were really close to who came to us and said, we can't support you, can't give you a baby shower, nothing, because you just got to hang your heads for a while. Of course, we were ticked. We were like, you got more hoops to jump through than God gave us. God's already forgiven us, but we got to earn more with you. And so then you start to feel like a victim because they're not treating us right. And it was our preacher, Stuart Schnurr, who was doing the wedding. We decided to get married about 2 months later, and he came and said, you're upset, right? And we said, yeah, we're upset. Look how these brethren are treating us. He said, well, do you have brethren that have been supportive? Yeah, well, we weren't focused on them. We were focused on the negative. He said, well, you want them to be understanding, don't you? Yes, we made a mistake. We've admitted it. We went forward. We said it in front of all these people, and we did this and this, and pretty high on ourselves, you know. And so he said, well, shouldn't you be as patient with them as you want them to be with you when they don't know how to react, when they react the wrong way? And then all of a sudden it's turned and pointed at us, we thought. But going back, I hear so many negative comments in various places. I see them online sometimes about the church. The church is a wonderful place. It's messy. I'm so glad you said that. It's full of imperfect people who don't know how to relate, who aren't as forgiving as they need to be, with all kind of problems. But it's wonderfully, beautifully, perfectly made and full of good people. And that message needs to be heard.
Absolutely. We need to remember that the best of men are men at best.
Yeah. Good.
And so while, I had to remember that, some people have lived some pretty tightrope lives. Some people, they grew up, some of our older brethren, they grew up and they went to the military, they came home, they found a wife, him and her probably met in matrimony, virgins, and they, waited 5 years and they started having kids, and, he's got 2 retirements, and she, stayed at home, and it's just perfect.
Right.
But that's not everyone.
Right.
And I know there's some brethren who have made great choices in life, and they've never smoked a cigarette, and alcohol's never passed their lips. And so they definitely would never understand about someone smoking marijuana or meth or cocaine or heroin or anything to that nature. That's really shocking to them.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is that's a reality of the world in which we live, and sometimes even good people get caught up in that.
Absolutely. Well, the thing is, too, using just what you said, let's take the picturesque couple in life and never have done this and never have done that. They have their own skeletons. And I've told my kids this, raising them, look, we're all good at going to church and saying, everything's great, everything's fine. Everybody is a mess somewhere. They may look like they got it all together, but somewhere in their life, there is a sin that they've been battling for 20 years. And they feel just like me and you and everybody else who keeps going to God about the same sin and feels horribly guilty. And how can you forgive me? Kind of like Paul's misery in Romans 7. I hate this, but I keep doing it. I hate sin, but I keep doing it. And so those people too, even though it looks nice, tidy, and presentable, they struggle too. Absolutely.
We were talking earlier before we started the episode about genuine, and that's what this podcast and this show's about, is genuine, authentic Christianity.
Yeah.
And so we're accustomed to putting on a mask and coming into church and everything's perfect.
Yeah.
We come among the saints and we don't have any problems.
Yeah.
And you can check my Facebook feed. I live a perfect life, right? Check my Instagram and my Twitter. You would think that, but that is not the reality.
No.
And then we're shocked when someone's life blows up and it becomes public.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, I didn't have a clue I had no clue that they were unhappy in their marriage.
Yes.
I had no clue that there were financial problems.
Yes.
They both drive $70,000 vehicles,
Yes.
and they live in a $500,000 house. I didn't know that they were in debt and it was about to go into bankruptcy.
Yeah.
They had no. That's because the mask.
Yeah.
And we live in this facade and this fake and this faux world and that's why we get shocked when people's lives blow up, and it's because we're really not in tune and in touch.
No. And there's a balance in there. Look, it's not just for elders or people that are going to prospectively be elders, but we are told to be blameless. But people get that mixed up and think, well, that means I have to, nobody ever gets to see. No, you got to balance that with James 5:16 to confess your faults to one another. I didn't mean I got to tell everybody in the world and broadcast them. I'm not going to put them on this podcast. I struggle with X, Y, and Z. But I got to have some people like you're just talking about in your example, some people that you trust, who you know will hold you accountable. And like Randy, that's the guy's name, right? That was drug testing you.
Yes.
And that's the point, is to be open and to be honest and to be real. I can't imagine how much easier, from your perspective, I know from my perspective, how much easier it is when you just say, you know, this is what I battle. This is what I struggle with.
I think that we have to be careful with confession.
Okay.
The devil will use anything to his advantage.
Yeah.
And so I do believe that when it comes to confession, the confession needs to follow the circle of sin, the public sins, but there's nothing wrong with, some people struggle with things that aren't necessarily a sin in and of themselves.
Right.
And when we choose to live a raw and genuine and real and live an open faith, and that doesn't mean that there's not a level of privacy.
No.
You know, I'm not going to broadcast every problem and every spat me and my wife have.
Oh.
I'm not going to show people my bank statement. No. There is a level of privacy that is good and healthy. But when it comes to living life and living the Christian life, when we go about it alone and we go about and we've got everybody fooled that, you know, what I'm doing in my life is perfection. And, you know, it's just vacations and big, beautiful presents and trips. And, you know, I'm dressed to a T and, you know, the kids everything's perfect. Sure. And that's just not reality.
That's right.
It's not authentic.
I'm glad you brought up that balance too. You know, like that's a good example. You're not going to broadcast all your problems with your wife, but at the same time, you still have your wife to be accountable to.
Right.
You know, so there's always that accountability. It doesn't mean, like I said, I'm not going to stand up from the pulpit and say, well, this is what I did this week. All this stuff is wrong. Now, but there are people like my wife or my children, and sometimes a close brother or two, that I'll say, you know what, I'm really struggling with this, and I need you to hold me. And that's one of the beautiful things of practicing something like James 5:16 is because how many times have you felt empowered because you found out somebody you really respect struggles? Not that they sin or not that you're glad that they sin, but that they really are struggling. And you say, oh, well, by the way, if you never said a word about addiction or you never shared that with anybody, you just kept that as private as possible, then how do you know brother or sister down the road who's really struggling with this wouldn't benefit from that by saying, you know what, that somebody else has been through this, somebody else has dealt with this, and they were kind enough to share it, I can make it.
Absolutely. I really feel like I would be robbing society and people and brethren that need help in that area. Oh. And, you know, even if it's a family member, so for some reason, it's so shameful to go to somebody like myself and who's even been there, lived it, done it, have the scars, have the charges. I've been there. Mm-hmm. But for some reason, it's so shameful to say, hey, my niece or my nephew or my son or my uncle or whoever is struggling with X, Y, and Z, and they're in jail right now, but they're fixing to get out, and what can I do to help them? Yeah. Well, ask those questions, because if you don't, you're not going to get any help.
Yeah.
We can't help in situations that are unknown. So I would be robbing God, and I would be robbing people that need help. God spared my life, and he did so, and he allowed me to live through certain situations and circumstances, and he's brought me through those. And I need to take what I know and what I've gained from those situations and help other people come out too.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just about me, and it's not about making me look good. It's pretty embarrassing to stand up in front of people or do podcasts like this and TV programs where I talk about what a failure I was in my life.
Yeah.
But you know what? It's not about me.
No.
It's not about me. It's about God will make a way out, and He's faithful.
Mm-hmm.
And Jesus is going to supply that which is needful. Where He guides, He provides. Philippians 4:19. My
Right.
God will supply all your needs. And if He's led you to it, He'll lead you through it.
Yeah.
And if He's brought you to an hour of change in your life, be it from addiction, and you're at a crossroads where you're able to make a choice, and you make the right choice, He'll see you through it. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's right. And it's just back to, it's so hard to talk about, but it's just back to a trust factor. Because I can't imagine the level of trust on your end to say, okay, I'm going to trust this process. I'm going to trust that this is the right way. Because I am, from what I'm gathering, you couldn't see a light at the end of the tunnel. It was just, this is the next right step. Your dad's there telling you, you're going to go do it. You say, I'm going to go do it. And it's one foot in front of the other, not to sound cliche. But that's really the crux of it, and the base of it is just knowing that God will provide somehow, some way. We don't do good with not knowing. I mean, look at all the material out there to try to explain stuff that God hadn't revealed. We don't do good with not knowing. And so that's why we worry so much, or I worry so much, is because I wanted A, B, C, and D. Well, I don't see B and C, kind of like Abraham. I'm old. She's old. She can't have kids. Father of what nation? What kid?
Yeah.
We'll help you out. Here's Hagar. But it's still about that trust issue.
And like with an addict, and I've known so many people who have refused to seek treatment.
Yeah.
And they find it, but they won't seek it. They won't go to it. When I went to Project Rescue, I was asked to make a year commitment. 12 months. I could not see that far down the road. And it seemed like an insurmountable, like this is forever. And I'm going to have to turn my life over to another man. I'm 30 years old.
Yeah.
I've never followed rules for the most part.
Yeah.
I was a rule breaker.
Yeah.
I was able to escape the majority of consequences in my life. So I wasn't used to consequences.
Learn how to be slick.
I was. Yes.
Yeah.
Or having family bail me out of trouble.
Okay.
Get in trouble and play the poor pitiful me card, and mom writes a check to the courthouse, and I'm out of trouble.
Right.
Never had to face the consequences. Well, there comes a time where, mama can't get you out of trouble. Daddy can't get you out of trouble. You can get into a level of trouble. Sin will lead you to a level of trouble that you can't get bailed out of.
Mm-hmm.
And unless God does something.
Mm-hmm.
And, I received a boatload of grace, and it's why I'm able to sit here and talk with you and do things like this, to plead with people to recognize the Christian life is what it is. It's a mess. It's a land of beginning again and again and again.
Thank you for saying
it's
that.
a land of, it's a life of making the next right decision.
Good.
It's not about me looking 12 months down the road. Uh-huh. It's not about me looking at when I'm possibly an old man, and maybe if I live to be 75 and I die peacefully in my sleep, like you were talking about earlier, did I die with a prayer on my lips? And
right.
It's about making the next right decision, because that's all I can do. Is when I'm faced with a circumstance or a decision to make, I can only make the next right choice, and that's what the Christian life is. And so, people get scared of making a 6-month or 12-month commitment. Well, a long-term strategy is the only way to make it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what the Christian life is. It's a long-term strategy that's done one moment at a time, one day at a time, one decision at a time.
Well said. The messy thing for me is all, and I'm going to switch gears here for the last little bit, but the messy thing for me is just wrapped up. And I appreciate the ESV translation for using the word practice so much in 1 John 3, because that just defines it. When I thought about it in practical terms, practicing is not perfecting. You don't, what is it you practice or you've practiced to do, whatever it is. You've never been perfect at it, whether it's playing the piano, guitar, whatever, a sport. So you always, Michael Jordan still practiced in his last year of the NBA because he wasn't perfect at basketball. The point being, it always includes the messy stuff, but I'm getting better. I'm getting better. I'm not like I used to be. You're not who you were 5 years ago. You're not who you were a year ago.
That's right. I practice sermons that I preach, and I can have, this lesson, pretty much down to a manuscript and have it memorized. Yeah. And I can have these words flowing off my tongue, and the next thing I know, I got my tongue tangled, and I skip over a point, and I'm preaching. I leave my outline, and it can be disaster.
Oh, yes, sir.
And it don't matter how much you practice.
Best sermon I ever preached, I forgot my notes. That was my first work. I was a campus minister, and they said, fill in for the preachers, like 300 people, which is a bunch for me. I grew up around 80 and 100.
Right.
And I'm sitting there in the Lord's Supper, and it's not in my Bible. This back before the technology. It's not in my Bible. So I hate to admit it, but I'm scrambling during the Lord's Supper trying to remember my points. Preached that day, and they said, that's the best sermon you've ever preached. And I thought, I didn't have my notes. Anyway, all that said, it's about the practice. I wanted to switch gears. We talked enough about your past, and there's so much more we could say. Rethinking this, I would have loved to have your dad here because him and your mom must be able to help parents in ways that so many, what mistakes they made, what they did, how to be like that tough love. That's sort of getting lost amongst some of us as brethren. We think loving our kids is doing what makes it easier for them, and it's not.
Yeah. I've had to reassure my dad so many times. He was such a wonderful dad. He is still a wonderful dad.
Yeah.
But parents, and I just want to speak candidly, because so many times children make bad choices and the parents beat themselves up.
Yeah.
What did I do wrong? What could I have done better? What? Nothing. Nothing.
Coming from the kid.
Look at, if you were to know my sister, straight A student, she was always a great student, brilliant. Now she's been married for years to her high school sweetheart. They've got two children. She homeschools them. She's like Superwoman. She's never done anything wrong
perfect, right?
Yeah. and then there's me, yeah, which is a stark contrast. And we grew up under the same roof, yeah, with the same rules, with the same discipline, with the same instruction.
And she wasn't the same favorite kid.
No, I was the baby. I was the favorite.
Right. Good.
But we grew up in the same house, and we took two totally different paths. It was not what my parents did wrong. I made my own choices. I had my own desires. I knew what was right. I knew a lot of scriptures. I had participated in Lads to Leaders, and I could lead the singing with the best of them and give presentations. And
you checked a lot of boxes, didn't you?
I checked the boxes, yeah. But I also had my own desires. And I, just like James says, I was drawn by my desires and enticed. Yeah. And I went after them. Mm-hmm. It wasn't my parents' fault. Mm-hmm. There was nothing that they could have done that would have changed the course that I chose for my own life. It wasn't their upbringing. So parents need to give themselves a little bit of a break when they know a parent will know if they've done their best.
Sure.
Of course, there's going to be little things that I wish I'd have done this or that, but that's not the crux of a person making their own decisions in life. Right. And when I got to a certain age, my parents were not in control of me.
Exactly.
I was running my own life.
And you weren't necessarily a reflection of them, no matter how people misunderstand that.
The way I lived my life was not a reflection of my raising.
Right.
It was totally opposite.
Right.
And that bothered me for a long time, but I was able to numb that. I was able to just suppress my raising after a certain amount of time of living a sinful life. You sear your conscience.
Yeah, exactly.
You get numb to it. And that's what I did. I numbed myself, and I completely did everything I could to forget the principles that I was raised with. Mm-hmm. Well, that's not my dad and mom's fault. my dad was a wonderful example, but I made my own decisions.
Yeah.
And so there's going to be some parents out here that have some wayward kids, and they're going to be struggling with what they could have done better. Probably absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
And I want them to know that it's not their fault.
I'm glad you said it that way.
It's not their fault
Oh.
for the decisions that their child ends up making, even at 16 and 17 years old. Man, at 17, you couldn't tell me anything.
Mm-hmm.
At 25, I thought my dad was an idiot.
Oh yeah.
You know,
I'm on my way to being an idiot.
And now I call him every day. Dad, what do you think about this? Hey, this is what I learned today.
Yeah.
Have you ever thought about this? And I value, but not as a young man.
No.
Not from the age of 15 to 25, you couldn't tell me nothing.
Yeah.
I knew it all.
It's interesting you
ignorant.
went down. It's interesting you went down that road, because I struggle with, I've got, my youngest will be at the end of this year, be 18, 20, 22, and 24. There's a lot of guilt. I don't understand these people that say no regrets. Well, you must be a terrible person, because I have a ton of them. Now, that said, we've had conversations with our kids, and I have told them, you have seen me cry. You have seen your mom cry and apologize for things we did wrong. There are things I should have done I didn't do, and vice versa. But I'll never be your cop-out for why you aren't, for the bad decisions you make. And they're going to raise their kids and make mistakes with them. We all do. But I'm glad you said that, because it's not that they were a failure as parents. They tried. Mistakes included, they tried. And at some point, it's like my son decided to go sneaking out of the house because he was around some older kids in high school and was good at sports and popular. I didn't know he's gone at 1 o'clock in the morning till 4 o'clock in the morning, and where all he's doing. That wasn't a reflection on me. I trusted my son was at home and not sneaking out the window with a bunch of guys that were older and could drive. It wasn't that me and Laura were failures. So I'm so glad you said that. I'm harping on and on about it. But,
you know, our inability to live perfect lives, you know, I find myself sometimes praying to God and saying, please forgive me of this again.
Yeah.
It's not a reflection on him being a bad father.
Right.
He has given us a perfect word.
Right.
He's given us a perfect sacrifice. He has offered to us a perfect life to live, the Christian life,
right,
with all of the benefits of it. And when we fail him, it's not a reflection on him. And so when our kids do the wrong thing, it's not a reflection. You know, when your kids rebel, it's not a reflection on you. When I rebelled, it was not, although the world will look at my dad and say he failed in some way.
Yeah.
And he's even told me, you know, he feels like he was a sorry father, which is the furthest thing from the truth.
Yeah.
Of course there's going to be regrets. Of course there's going to be things you're going to look back and say, I wish I'd have done that. There's times where he probably wishes that he would have given me the spanking when he didn't.
Mm-hmm.
When I was able to be cute and get out of it.
Right.
But that's not his. I made decisions.
All that didn't lead to you doing what you did.
No.
That's
it didn't lead me to being a meth addict.
Right.
A severe criminal.
Right. This is not the path he put you on. Very good. Let's end it with this. Where do you want to go? What do you want to do? There's a couple of questions. This is one. Or do you have one of those? Do you have, hey, this is what I want to go do and be, and these are my dreams now? So
for the last 5 years, I have been walking through the open doors
right,
that God's opened. Yeah. When my dad asked me that pivotal question that night in the hospital room at Erlanger in Chattanooga, God opened the door. When I said I would take help, it was that night that God opened the door and introduced my dad to a man named Ronnie Crocker, got his phone number, and got me in to Project Rescue to start the rehab. He opened that door. I walked through it. He has been opening doors over the last 5 years, and I've been walking through them, and everything's been pretty good.
Yeah.
And so what I desire is to be able to minister in some way, whether it be in a pulpit or whether it be in some college ministry, or in some whatever door he opens for me to walk through. That's what I plan on doing. Do I have desires of my own? Sure. Yes, I would like to get my wife and son as close to our family as possible.
Right.
But we understood and talked about, we may end up in Idaho. Who knows? But we're walking through open doors, and he's opened the doors, and he's been faithful, and that's what I'm working on, is being faithful.
Good. That was Philip. Philip amazes me in Acts 8. He didn't have plans to go to Samaria. A former Jew did not have plans to go to Samaria. He didn't have plans to go to Gaza. He just, wherever God wanted, and open doors I like better, but wherever and whatever God wanted, that's what he was doing. And he was going to be a teacher all the way and ministering, as we say. It's funny, he said, we'd like to do this and do that. When we were getting out of school, I said, we both said we really don't want to go for whatever reason. It's too hot for me. I don't want to go to way down south, Mississippi or Alabama or Georgia, and nothing against those states. I just didn't want to go that far south. First and only interview was in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, 50 miles from the coast. That's where I served as a campus minister. Then I got a job in Lucedale for 4 years as a pulpit guy, and that was God going, yeah, where?
Yeah, gnats the size of your hand.
Yeah, exactly. And walk out at 7 a.m. and can't breathe because of humidity.
Yeah.
But so you try to be open. The last question is there anything you want to cap this off with that's been left unsaid here that you want to just close with? Anything? That's kind of an open question, but
I want people to know that the Christian life is an authentic and genuine life. It's not a perfect life as far as the way we're going to live it, but we have a perfect God. He had a perfect Son. And when he applies his perfect blood to our souls, and we do our best to honor that commitment, everything's going to be all right. We may not be able to see the forest from the trees. We may not be able to see through the eye of the storm that we're living in. But it doesn't matter what situation we find ourselves in. Faithfulness is all that's required. Choosing him above all other things. Addiction's hard to come through, but he saw me through it, and if he'll see me through it, he'll see other people through it. Mm-hmm. And it may not be drugs, it may be pornography, it may be to food, it may be to you name it.
Plenty of them.
God is faithful, and I believe it's Colossians 1:6. If he has begun a good work in you, he'll see it through to the end. And that's what he's done with me. I've seen him do it with other men's lives. And I just encourage people to live a genuine, authentic faith. Be real when you're struggling. Mm-hmm. Don't struggle alone. Tell somebody. There's nothing to be ashamed about. We all struggle. If we're honest with ourselves, we've all got our problems, be it meth or be it muffins. We've got our problems.
That's a T-shirt. Be it meth or muffins. That's great. I appreciate all of this. I appreciate you being on. I knew from the beginning I did not want this to be the Robby Eversole story. And am I saying that right? Eversole, is that
Eversole? Yes.
Okay. I didn't want this to be like the show. And let me say this too for the people watching this. At no point are we talking about either current sins or past sins and doing it like some of these youth ministers do. They're like, well, back in the day. There's no pride in any of this. It's just a matter of hoping to share in order to show the glory of God, the power of God, and how he works through our lives, and to be somewhat relatable. I'm hoping somebody will watch this and go, okay, I can do this, or something in this will help them be that much stronger, or make a decision like you had to make that was so difficult.
I want to say this before the program closes. This is your show. If you're watching this and you need help, you need some advice, you need to talk to somebody like myself that's been there and done that, reach out to Zach.
Yeah.
get a hold of him. He knows how to get a hold of me.
That's right.
And I trust that he will do that.
I will.
Because we're here to help people. And that's what this episode is about. Like you said, it's not about reliving the good old days. It's about honoring the good God. And the decisions that we made or that I made are shameful at best. But he brought me through them, and that is the past. But it's a reality, and other people are living in that reality right now.
That's right.
And we want to help people.
Yeah, and that past can help, just like there's pasts of all these people in this book that are imperfect besides Jesus, and it helps us to learn from it, and you can use that as well. So yes, please reach out. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram. We are not trying to grow some YouTube channel. We are not making money off of this. If we ask for money now and then, it's just so we can have some equipment to do this stuff. Robby knows and sees the inside. We're kind of bare bones, but the main point, like he said, getting back to is to help and find somebody. And if we can be that somebody, we'd love to help you. Robby, thanks.
Thanks
we'll
for
do it
having
again
me.
sometime, man.
Sure.
All right,
I would love to.
All right.